You're a damn fool!
Looks like we're talking about Farmworld Finn, mainly because he was the original crossover that's introduced in the story that makes some pretty hectic multiversal madness, and considering that we finally got some closing fact with the recent Fiona and Cake episodes, I have a decent amount to talk about. Now, Farmworld Finn is a variant of Finn that was produced by the original Finn's wish that the Lich never existed, which resulted in a collection of events not happening, one of which is that the mushroom bomb was never detonated thanks to the sacrifice of this world's Simon. This made it so that the energy never changed the world's elasticity, the metric that decides how much imagination and magic affect the world, resulting in magic being incredibly rare. The Lich, Oozers, Undead, and Rainicorns never went on a genocidal spree, so humans for the most part weren't mutated and wiped out. That being said, the war still happened, and upon Simon's death, the crown froze over the entire planet for over 400 years, which resulted in civilization crumbling and then going through their equivalent to that of a dark age. Most territories were led by gangs, and most modern medicine and understanding was lost, though agriculture and some instances of advanced technology such as prosthetic limbs remained intact. Now on to Finn himself. This version of Finn, due to the lack of the Lich and therefore magic in this world, got to be raised in a somewhat normal farming life with his Farmworld version of Minerva and Martin as his parents. However, due to the fact that they lived in the territory of Big Destiny, most of their lives were controlled by the gang, forcing them to give up most of what they owned and earned. Just like almost every reality with a Finn, he also had his best friend Jake the dog, though in this timeline he had the addition of his mule Bartram. That is until Big Destiny and his gang further raised the taxes they charged all of the citizens, which forced Finn and his family to sell Bartram. This eventually led to Finn falling down Simon's resting place and finding him crushed under the bomb, or rather what was left of him under the bomb. He would think that he could sell the crown, but was briefly stopped by a much older Marceline, who due to the fact that the vampires never went haywire, never was transformed into an immortal vampire herself. After a brief scuffle, a barking dog, and a glorified laser tag product, Finn would steal the crown and attempt to sell it so that he could keep Bartram, not knowing the massive power the crown holds. That being said, due to the fact that bartering gold, ruby, and crusted headwear isn't exactly a great idea when inside a city of thieves, you would imagine that he would get robbed, specifically by the Destiny gang, which right after would steal his mule in order to eat it. Finn would attempt to fight back and would succeed in getting his mule and crown. However, Big D giving Finn the crown and his mule back was more of a power move on his part. This move was mainly a way of showing that he completely controls what Finn can and can't have, as he immediately destroyed everything else and called the crown and the mule his final possessions, even going out of his way to somehow beat Finn back to his house and attempting to burn his family alive. This culminated in him being forced to wear the crown and use its power to save his family. However, this would immediately backfire, as the crown would almost instantaneously begin bathing Finn in madness to the point where it made Simon's transformation look like a blessing. Overwhelmed by his newfound power, he began unleashing ice and snow in every direction, specifically ice lightning bolts, and the impact of these ice spears would crack open the case of the mushroom bomb, making Finn responsible for the bomb's detonation and releasing the essence of the Lich. This also resulted in Marceline being melted down to the bone due to the fact that she was at ground zero, and Jake became the new vessel of the Lich as a result. In a brief moment of sanity, he at the very least managed to save his family by sending them far away with Bartram, even if this was only temporary. He then would begin releasing the frozen Destiny gang members in hopes to add them to his list of allies, though they would flee for obvious reasons, but upon them doing so, Finn would hear distant barking and would seek out Jake at the center of the explosion. However, as I said, Jake becomes the new vessel for the Lich, and due to the fact that he was doused in mutagenic ooze, he was given some levels of shapeshifting abilities, which the Lich quickly took advantage of. This would result in the two having a brief battle. Who won exactly is unknown, but regardless, they would eventually form an unlikely partnership. This is where Finn took a massive turn for the worse, becoming what the gangs dubbed the Snowman. During this time, he was a human equivalent of a monster. He hunted down everyone he could find and would freeze them entirely. Men, women, children, it did not matter. During this time, he was barely aware of who and where he was, and during his continued kidnapping of anyone he could find, including his younger brother and parents, the Lich brainwashed various people, most notably Big D, in order to scour the world in search for the Enchiridion and the Gems of Power in hopes to destroy the entire multiverse, even going out of his way to dampen Prismo's powers to ensure that he would not interfere with his plans directly. In fact, with the help of Ice Finn, he actually managed to overcome this world's version of Billy and ended up kidnapping him so that he could open a portal to the multiverse. Luckily for everyone, Prismo sends the current variant of Finn Finn and Jake with the insanely powerful object that is the Maid, a weapon specifically designed to remove the physical form of any Class A interdimensional screw-ups and set everything back to normal within a specific timeline. This results in confrontation between the two variants where Ice Finn defeats normal Finn pretty handedly and the Lich puts Jake to sleep. This is where we learn the somewhat obvious truth where he lied to Finn, making him believe that the plan was to save the world when in reality the Lich wanted to kill everyone and even telling Finn he was going to die over and over again. Luckily enough, Grass Sword swoops in to save the day by cutting off the Lich's arm and Jake accidentally sending said sentient arm to every dimension in the multiverse, which kinda screws everybody, but we'll get to that in another video. The Lich would then attempt to kill Farmworld Finn now that he is both powerless and served his purpose, but would be stopped by Jake. The small interval gives Finn a chance to regain his gem and his powers, but he is quickly overpowered and has his crown knocked off by the Grass Sword, which took over Finn's arm. Finn then reminds him who he is, and in a brief moment of clarity, Finn begins to become more aware of his surroundings. Together, the two would use the Maid to undo the damage that the Lich had done to the world, along with destroying his vessel entirely. After this, our Finn is teleported back to Prismo along with Jake, and Finn makes the request to help Farmworld Finn. This results in Prismo doing some time editing so that the past and future happen at once. This allowed the crown to be destroyed by the mushroom bomb, but still allowed it to remain up until the Lich was defeated. This resulted in Finn being cured, but with all of the memories of what transpired and what he had done during his time as the snowman. After this event, things took a further nosedive. After Finn lost the crown, the Big Destiny gang would take credit for the disappearance of the snowman, which made almost all rival gangs and normal citizens their allies, resulting in their collective power increasing to a much higher level. This allowed them to rule with an iron fist with little to no opposition. Finn himself would separate from the gangs in the cities, living the farming life with his parents. At some point, roughly what seems to be about 8 to 10 years prior to us seeing them again, if not maybe more, he had a wife that is currently unnamed who gave birth to many of his kids who could have possibly died within this time frame. Due to what had happened, he grew to despise magic, especially anything linking to the crown, calling Simon a fool for even looking for it. Despite this, he still offered them the chance to stay at his home for the night. However, after a brief encounter with the scarab, he would go out of his way to try to warn the others. This culminates in him helping his son defend against the Destiny gang, but this went poorly as it resulted in him having to confront Scarab again, and despite holding his own briefly, he would be defeated. Now, it's never been confirmed whether he survived his injuries or not, but what I could tell is that those were spiked metal points that were embedded in the side of his head with enough force to crack solid stone. So I'm going to go on a limb here and assume that this was the end of his journey. Let's hope they go back and give a 100% clear answer, even though I honestly believe it to be pretty straightforward. He is definitely dead in my opinion. So what do you guys think? Do you think he died? Do you think he survived his injuries? What do you think happened to his parents? Let me know down below because that's all I got for this episode. So if you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. If you're interested, maybe go back and watch my other videos. Thanks again to my patrons on Patreon. As always, you guys are awesome. Anyway, I won't keep you. And as always, I will see you in the next video. Bye.